Hi everyone, this is Heba from My Little Journal, and today I'm excited to be setting up my 2023 reading journal. I do have a 2022 reading journal set up video here on my YouTube channel, so if you haven't seen that, I will link it up above for you. But today I'm going to do a quick flip through of my 2022 reading journal, and then we're going to set up 2023 together. I also did want to mention that I have a class in my Etsy shop, and I'm sharing all the measurements, the printing, the stamping, everything about setting up your own reading journal. And that class is amazing. There's also some printables for you. So if you don't want to do all of this yourself, you can grab some of those printables. They are easy to use and just stick them down in your own journal. And I'm actually going to use some of those in my 2023 setup. So let's take a look at my 2022 and what it looks like now after it's all filled up. So this is mid-November. And so there's a lot that I still didn't fill out yet. I still have to fill out December, obviously, but I thought it would be fun to kind of do a quick flip through and you can kind of see what my reading journal looks like after the pen. So I started with stamping a little intro for my journal. And by the way, this journal is from Archer and Olive. Forgot to mention that. I love the coffee cup. I still have a lot of pages in this journal. I did not use all of them, so I decided that I'm going to be documenting 2023 in the same journal, so I save myself some money and I don't waste any of that beautiful paper. So my first challenge is my daily reading challenge. This was my nightly reading challenge, and I basically just keep track of what I read. I decided to change it to daily because I want, sometimes I don't read at night and I read throughout the day. So I thought this was a good idea and a great challenge. And I love how colorful it ends up at the end of the year. And I just love all the books in there. And all I do for tracking my reading daily is I basically highlight the days I read. And I also do write in when I start a new book. So I add book 1 if I started on the 1st, book 4 when I started, book 2 when I started on the 4th. So I just highlight the days I read. And as you can see, I just missed a few throughout the year, which is pretty awesome. This is my book Shelfie, and so I love my book Shelfie. It's my favorite. The reason I love my book Shelfie is because the books are big enough to write in. And so I know a lot of people have asked me about the stamp set, and I believe it's still sold out, but I always recommend to click the notification button on Studio Calico's website if you want that stamp set, and hopefully they'll bring it back and notify you. But also, like I mentioned earlier, I do have some printables. It looks almost the same, and I will share that once I do my flip through. But if you are missing out on that stamp set and you want something similar, I totally recommend to check out my printables. I did add a little flip out, thinking that I might need more space, but I ended up not really needing it. So basically all I'm going to do is just take this out and probably add it to my 2023 bookshelf. And if I use it, great. If I don't, I can move it to the next year. What I read is basically tracking all the books I read that year. I just add the book, the author, and then color in the stars, the rating, and then I like that colorful column there. I just color in each month in a different color, and I love that look. And it's just a great overview of the books I read for 2023. My A to Z challenge, I've said this before, I never finish an A to Z challenge. I'm going to try this year or 2023, hopefully, but I didn't have a Q, U, X, Y, and Z. And then this is my GoodReads. So my goal was 60. I'm at 54, and I think I can make it. I'm sure I can make it. I have, probably 5-6 weeks left. So I'm excited for that, and I'm definitely going to hit my Goodreads goal. This is my Reading with Heba book club. So I have a little book club on Instagram. It is free, and I let the members choose our next book. They get to vote between 2 different books, and whatever wins, we read for the month. So for October, we actually ended up reading 2 books, which was funny because we couldn't make up our mind and it was a tie. But we read some really great books throughout the year. And if you want to be a part of that, all you have to do is just follow that book club, which is Reading with Heba. I do have it linked in the description box for you. And just meet up in the book club Zoom discussions, which is so much fun. And basically all I do for my Reading with Heba page is add the book covers and the star ratings. I have a bingo challenge. I did really good for my bingo challenge. I still didn't read a book that was translated. Hopefully I get to that, but obviously I finished it and I love this. This is a lot of fun. I just add things that I would like to read more of, and I usually don't. I basically put little challenges for myself, like a Muslim author, a Black author, a reread. So I'll reread something that I enjoyed, LGBTQ plus book, things like that, that I think, you know, would push me to read outside of my comfort zone. This is the Reading to Zero challenge. This I got from another booktuber here on YouTube. I believe her name is Jacqueline, if I'm not mistaken. I will link her in the description box, but she does have this amazing challenge of reading your own TBR, your physical books. And I love that because I have loads of books that I haven't read yet and would like to. So I did that little challenge. I did pretty good. I read 22 books from my own shelves, and that made me really happy because without this challenge, I don't think I would have gone to my own library and looked up, you know, any physical books that I had and need to read. So this was a fun little challenge to do. The buddy reading big books. This is another favorite. I get to read big books once a month, or one big book once a month, with my friend Elizabeth, and we read loads. So we started strong. We were reading like, you know, 688 books. I think it started to dwell down a little bit, and we went to like the 300s. Here's a 500 book, a 500-page book, but we did pretty good. We did not read one in October, November, and December, but I think we're going to get back into it for 2023 and hopefully read more. But this is a great little challenge if you want to read bigger books and have a buddy to read with you and kind of support you and read through it together. So that's a fun little challenge. The monthly review is basically my favorite book from that month. And I just kind of break it down into how many books I read that month, and then I just write my favorite book. So you can see here, Born a Crime was my favorite book for January. Reminders of Him was for February. Pretty Girls was for March. So I basically just add my favorite book and the total books I read that month. It's a nice little tracker, basically. Now we get into the monthlies, and I just stamp out a calendar and write out the books I read that month. So this calendar I've been asked about a lot, and I basically just write when I started the book. I add an arrow throughout the days I read that book, and once I finish that book, I'll write the end. So you can see, once you look at the calendar, you can see how long it took me to read one book. And I just color each one in a different color, and that way it's colorful. I can track how many days it took me to read a book, and I just think it's really cute. I basically do it for every single month, and I change up the stamping and the washi tape. As you can see, it looks really, really pretty. This year, or for my 2023 setup, I'm not going to be stamping the calendars. I'm actually going to be using my printables. It's just easier for me and faster, and that's why I love the printables. But as you can see, I just change it up from month to month. I believe that I just did all of them. I probably didn't do November and December yet, but I will get to that. And I love how these turned out. I also didn't read as much in October. As you can see, I only read 3 books, which is okay. But I think I did not do November and December. But I just left these blank, and I'll come back to it later. Now, I do love this spread, which is basically all my book covers that I read. One day, I will be able to fill out the whole page. But for now, it's not filled out, which is okay. But I love this spread. It's so simple and easy to do. And like I said earlier, I do have a class. I share all the things, how to print your book covers, these sizes, how I like print every single different size in my reading journal. And I do give measurements on all these spreads. So anyways, I thought this would be my last spread in my reading journal for 2022, but not halfway, I think a month or two within the year of 2022, I decided to do a book of the month tracker, and this did not go well. It's cute, but it didn't go well. I barely used it. I wasn't reading a lot of my book of the months, which I put on hold for now because I had loads of book of the month books that I was not reading each month. And I thought doing a tracker would actually help me get to them faster, but that wasn't the case. So I ended up not really using this spread as much as I wanted to, but it is pretty cute. So that is my reading journal 2022 after the pen. I love how it turned out. I'm not really going to change a lot of my spreads in 2023. I'm the type of person, if something works, keep at it. And whatever doesn't work, kind of drop it, which I'm going to be dropping that spread here for my book of the month. I don't think I want to document or track my book of the month. So I don't think I'm going to be doing the spread, but I'm definitely keeping a lot of these. I might change it up a little bit with the fonts. I might be using some of my printables as well. So if you want to see how I'm going to set up my 2023 reading journal, just keep watching and I will get to that. And like I said, I'm going to be using this beautiful journal. I don't want to waste the paper, but while we're at it, I did want to share with you my printables. They are so much fun and they're really easy to use. I have a calendar printable. So those calendars back here that you saw earlier, I just did them into a printable. These are going to be easier for me to use and I don't have to stamp everything out myself. So I'm definitely going to be using these. And like I said, these are in my Etsy shop. So that is the calendar. I also have printables that have no titles. So if you want to kind of stamp out your own title or hand letter your own title, you can do that. But this is like my reading daily challenge. So you don't have to draw this out yourself. You can just print out the printable and stick it down. This is what I read and with the star ratings. So there's some fun printables there that you can use. So basically I have one without titles and I have one with titles. And this is the bookshelf that I was talking about. So you can fill out your titles, color them in. I love the bookshelfie. If you do not want to draw out your own or stamp out your own, you can grab some of these printables. And like I said, I have with titles and without. So if you don't want these titles up there and you want to call it whatever you want to call it, you can do that by grabbing the no titles. We have some book trackers, books to read, monthly favorites. I love this one. I think I will end up using that one as well. But anyways, I'm going to end up using some of my printables. Let's see. And I will also make my own. As always, I like to add my own stamping and my own designs in my reading journal. And we'll set it up together and see how it all comes together. I'm really excited to set up my reading journal and share with you all the new spreads, the older spreads that I'm going to keep, and how I'm going to use some of these printables within my own spreads. So let's get to it and jump right into 2023 reading journal setup video. Okay, let's go ahead and start setting up our 2023 reading journal. So like I said earlier, I'm going to be using the other half of my Archer and Olive journal to set up my reading journal. So I envisioned a large 2023 as my title or intro page, and I thought it would be fun if I used my book stamps to stamp out the numbers. Now, I've never done this before, so I did have to write out 2023, and I'm just going over the numbers with the books. I was kind of nervous about this. I didn't know if it's going to work out, but it actually turns out really, really cool, especially once I color them in. Right now, it kind of looks like a hot mess, and you can't see or envision what I'm talking about. But once I start stamping and coloring things in, it does come together. So this is a long process and kind of tedious a little bit. So I'm just going to set some music for you. I'm not going to walk you through this. I'm just basically stamping out 2023 in book stamps. And I also did want to say that I'm using so many different book stamps. Whatever I find that's available, I will link it in the description box, but a lot of these book stamps are unavailable or out of stock. But again, I will try to find whatever is available and link them in the description box for you. Here's a little tip for you if you want to recreate this in your reading journal. I do recommend trying to keep the twos similar. That way you have your stamp out and you just stamp it twice basically while it's out. You don't have to kind of switch out your book stamps. I'm also using the same stamp on different numbers just because I don't want to keep switching out my stamps, if that makes sense. It's a good way to finish up your stamping faster. When if you don't have stamps, I also recommend using stickers. Stickers work as well, or shrinking down your numbers and make this smaller, especially if you have stickers and you don't want to waste all your stickers on these large numbers. Definitely recommend shrinking down your numbers and using your sticker sheets to recreate this. But this was so much fun to put together. Again, it does take a long time. It is a little bit tedious, especially that you want to make sure that the stamps fit nicely and kind of fits into your numbers properly. So it does take a while, but it's so worth it in the end because it does turn out beautiful. Okay, so I'm done stamping, and as you can see, it kind of looks like it's 2023. I'm gonna do an outline for my numbers. I felt like if I added the outline, they would pop more and you could actually see the numbers better. So I'm gonna do the little outline, and then I'm gonna grab my Tombow markers. I believe I used some of my Crayola Super Tips to color in these books. I don't color in every single book. I do leave some just blank because I don't want it to be overwhelming. And I did stick to a few colors. I love certain colors in my Tombow markers, and I tried to stick to those so it kind of matches and it doesn't look like a hot mess. I also did want to mention when coloring in your books to make sure that you balance out the colors. I made sure that I didn't repeat the color in the same spot or around the same area. I want to make sure that the colors were balanced out and scattered throughout my numbers. So I definitely recommend when you have a certain color that you're coloring in at the moment, make sure that you're using it throughout the numbers, just again to balance out those colors and to make sure that you're not repeating the same color over and over. You don't want like a stack of book to all be yellow. It's just not going to look that good. So make sure to kind of color in a few yellow books within the stack and then kind of move on to the next one. That way you have a nice balanced out title. While I was coloring in my books, I still felt like my numbers weren't standing out. So I decided to do some shadowing or drop shadow for each number. And I started with this really light gray, but it wasn't doing it for me. So you're gonna actually see me in a little bit grab a darker gray and go over it again, just because I felt like it wasn't standing out enough. And once I'm done coloring in my books, I'm actually gonna color in the background with that light gray. Again, when I was done and everything was colored in, I still felt like the numbers weren't standing out. So that's why I decided to color in the background with the lighter shade of gray. I know coloring in between the books could be hard because, you have to make sure that you're not coloring over the books. But with this gray, this light gray, which is one of my favorite grays, I can't remember the number. I'm trying to remember right now. It's the N89. It's so light, so coloring in between the books was pretty easy. Okay, I'm almost done with my intro page. It looks beautiful. I'm just gonna grab my Passion Planner tabs so I can separate 2022 from 2023, and then we can move on with my first reading challenge. So if you've ever watched any of my reading journal setups, you know I have a few challenges that I love to keep up with throughout the year, and this one's one of my favorites. This began as my nightly reading challenge, and then I switched it up last year to my daily reading challenge. This is a fun way to keep up with your reading and kind of see if you've been reading every day or not. So I'm going to start by stamping out my title. I'm using this beautiful alpha from the Paper Person shop. I'm just going to stamp it across, and then I'm going to set up my calendar and my challenge. So for this challenge, there's a lot of measuring and counting, but it's pretty easy to do, and I'm going to go ahead and just grab my ruler and set it up myself. But if you've taken my reading journal class, I share the measurements and all that good stuff with you, and there is, like I said, printables. So if you don't want to put this together yourself and waste your time counting, you can definitely use my printables as well. Again, I will link it in the description box for you. But I'm going to go ahead and set this up. I'm also going to grab my monthly stamps to stamp in January through December at the top. I'm going to write out my numbers on the side, and that way I can track my reading throughout the year. Like I said earlier, this is one of my favorite challenges, and I love how it looks. It's very simple and basic, but once it's filled out, it becomes very colorful, and that's what I love about this challenge. As you can see here, I just grabbed a stamp set with the months, and I'm going to stamp out January through December at the top in those boxes. And then on those side small columns, I'm going to fill them out with the numbers. So basically every month has its day and the number, and I can fill them out once I've read. And when I don't read, I just put a line through it, and that means I didn't read. So the colors represent reading days, and then the lines represent the non-reading days. To finish up my challenge, I'm going to stamp out 2 books on each side of my title, and then I'm going to color in my title just to bring in a pop of color, and then we can move on to my next spread. Now that my page is done, we can move on to our next page, which is a favorite. It is my book Shelfie. So putting this together is really easy, especially if you have the book stamp that I'm going to be using in a little bit. If you do not, again, I do have some printables, or you can draw out your own books. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting together my bookshelf. It's really easy to do, and I make sure that my bookshelves are large. I like the fact that I can write in my books, and I want to make sure that my books have enough space because I do go big with my books. Now I'm going to go ahead and color in my bookshelf to look like a bookshelf and kind of look more grainy, I guess. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to start stamping my title. I'm going to go with a different font and a different stamp set to stamp Bookshelfie at the top. I will leave a lot of space. I made sure to use smaller alphas for this because I wanted to have the space to stamp either plants or books or something up there. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp Bookshelfie, and then I'm going to start stamping my books in the bookshelf. So I use a Studio Calico stamp set for this. Like I said earlier, you can either draw out your own books. If the stamp set is not available anymore, make sure to click the notify me button. They will notify you when the stamp set is back in. And if you don't want to wait, definitely grab those printables because it looks very similar to my bookshelf and the books are pretty big. It has enough space to write in your books. But anyways, let's move back to my title. I'm going to be stamping some smaller plants next to my title. I want to bring in some color there and fill out the empty space in between my title. Now that I'm done stamping and filling out my title, we can move on to my bookshelf. So I grabbed that stamp set from Studio Calico, and I'm going to be stamping the books in all kinds of different ways. So basically vertically and horizontally. I do want to make sure that I have enough books on my bookshelf just in case I read a lot of books in 2023. But I also want to make sure that I have space in between my stack of books because I do want to break up the bookshelf with a little bit of cuteness. So basically, I want to make sure I have space for maybe a plant, a globe, pencils, or something. So you'll see me kind of leave a tiny bit of space in between some of the book stacks. That way, once I'm done stamping my books, I can come in with some cuteness and add that to my book stack and make it look more like a bookshelf. So at this point, I'm done stamping out my books, and I'm just going to go through my stamp sets and fill out those empty spots between my book stacks. And I did want to mention this, that you can definitely use stickers for this. So if you don't have stamps, you can use stickers. And I do end up using a sticker, I think. But this is a great spot for you to use up some of those stickers as well. As always, whatever stamps are available, I will link them in the description box for you. But again, I use a lot of older stamps. I tend to hold on to my favorite stamps, and they do go out of stock or companies shut down. So a lot of these stamps are not available anymore, and that's why I recommend kind of searching yourself and finding some good book stamps or even using your stickers. There's a lot of amazing sticker shops on Etsy that create beautiful book stamps that would work in your bookshelfie. I'm almost done with my bookshelfie. I'm just going to grab my Tombow markers and start coloring things in. I start with my title, and then I'm going to go in and color in some of those stamps that I stamped in between my book stacks just to give it a pop of color. And once you fill out each book, or what I do, I just fill out the book with the book title that I read and then color in the spine so I know that I read that book, basically. And by the end of the year, you have a beautiful, colorful bookshelf. But I'm done with my bookshelfie, we can move on to my what I read spread. I love keeping up with what I read throughout the year, especially keeping up with the star rating. So this is a very basic layout. I literally use every single line for a different book and add my title up top and also add my stars to that sidebar so that basically that right side column is going to hold my star rating. The left side column is going to hold my numbers, and the top, I'm just going to stamp out my title. So you'll see here, I stopped at, I think maybe 50 books, but I do end up sometimes reading more. So I still have space for that. And I grab a little star stamp to fill out my star rating. And I'm going to grab some alphas and stamp out what I read right at the top. And I went with this outline alpha because I wanted to bring in some color, and I'll also stamp some books as well at the top. I do lose some footage at some point, I think when I'm stamping the book stacks, but it's not a big deal. I literally was just stamping the book stacks across just to have somewhere to add some color because this is such a bland layout, and I use my book stamps to be able to bring in some color to my spread. This is where I lost some footage. I apologize about that, but I just stamped the book stacks on both sides of my title. And now I'm just gonna use my Tombow markers to color in the books. Again, this is a great way to add color to your spread. As you can see, this came together pretty quickly. Once you know the measurements and everything, it just comes together really fast. So once I color in my books and I color in my title, I'm going to separate my lines where the star ratings are. I'm going to separate it with a gray line. So I basically skip one and then add a gray line, skip the next, add a gray line. I like doing that within my journals, especially if I'm using the full spread, just to kind of separate it because when I'm looking down at my journal, I kind of can't see where the lines start and end. So adding that gray line really, really helps. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a bit. Basically going to use that Tombow marker, the N89, to create those lines. And like I said earlier, I just skip a line. That way, when you come in to write in your titles, it's so much easier. So my what I read spread is done, and we can move on to my A to Z challenge. This year, I'm changing up the look of my A to Z challenge. I drew out Kindle, basically. It really doesn't look like a Kindle. It looks more like an iPad, but it still works. As you guys know, I do not draw. So this was a little bit of a struggle for me, but I was able to draw out a large one, and I just went over it with my pen, and I will add a little line to separate the letters from the books. We'll write out A to Z, and then I'm going to be stamping out A to Z at the top. I went with some large alphas for this one, and because I knew I wanted to color in my Kindle, I kept my title simple and gray. I went with some gray ink, and I will color in the A to Z with some gray Tombow marker as well, my favorite, of course. And then we can color in the Kindle and basically call the spread done. Even though I never finish an A to Z challenge, but I still love this challenge very much. So I decided to keep it in my journal. And I thought if I changed it up a little bit and probably drew out this Kindle, that it would get me all excited and probably finish it this year. So I'm almost done with my A to Z challenge. I'm just going to add a little bit of shadowing to my Kindle. I'll add a drop shadow as well, and then we can move on to my GoodReads challenge. So this year for my GoodReads challenge, I'm keeping it very similar to last year, just going to change it up slightly. I have the stamp set from Close to My Heart, and it has those like neon signs. They're so cute. So I thought I would use one of those to hold my title for my GoodReads challenge. And then I'm just going to go over my lines here. This is where I'm going to hold like how many books I read. And on the bottom, I'm going to write out what kind of books I read. So if I read fiction, it's a certain color. If I read a nonfiction book, it's a different color. And that way, when I look at the spread, I can see how many books I read and what kind of book I read, which genre. Now that I'm done outlining my numbers and everything, I'm going to go ahead and stamp out GoodReads in my little neon sign. And then I'm going to grab some beautiful stickers that I got from an Etsy shop. I can't remember her name for the life of me, but I will link everybody I mentioned and anything I used in the description box for you. But using stickers is a fast and easy way to add color to your spread and not have to worry about stamping, especially if you don't have stamps. So those are the stickers I was talking about. Her stickers are beautiful. And I'm just going to add a few stack of books at the top to fill in that space. I'll also grab a number stamp and stamp 60 right above one of those stacks of books and call my spread done. You can see my GoodReads challenge is complete and it looks beautiful. And now that it's done, we can move on to my Reading with Heba book club. If you didn't know, I do have a book club and you can definitely join it on Instagram. But I didn't feel like doing this myself and just adding all the lines and the titles and everything. So I decided to use one of my printables. This printable, you can add your book covers. It's all measured out for you, so you don't have to do this yourself and create boxes for your book covers. It also has the stars. And as I said earlier, I do have printables with titles and without titles. So I went with without titles because I wanted to use my own stash. So I'm going to go with sticker alphas. This is an easy way to add a title, a clean way to add a title for sure. So I'm just going to use this alpha sticker to add Reading with Heba. I will also use those book stickers as well to just add some color to my title. And then for the months, I'm going to grab one of my favorite stamps right now. It's from Studio Calico and it has the months and they're teeny tiny, so they're perfect for spreads like these to stamp out the months. I'm basically done. Once you stick down your printable, add a few stickers here and there, maybe add a title, you're basically done. And if you don't want to do all of that, you can grab the printables with titles and it already has the months on there and the title as well. So this is the stamp set that I was talking about from Studio Calico. I'm just going to use it to add January through December, and I will go over my months with a Tombow marker just to add a pop of color to my months. And then throughout the year, I can just print out a 1.5 by 2 inch book cover to fill out each month and the book we read for the book club. Okay, let's move on to my bingo challenge. So I'm going to start by stamping out bingo at the top. That's going to be my title. And I'm using these large alphas. Now for my O, I did this last year and it looked really cute. So I'm going to do it again. I'm going to use a circle that says "Let's stay home," and it has a little book and a coffee cup, and I thought it was cute, and it gives you that whole theme of reading. So I'm just going to use that stamp to finish off my title. And I want to create the boxes for my challenge. So to save myself some time, I decided to stamp out my boxes because drawing them out is very tedious and it takes a lot of time. So just stamping them made sense. So I just grabbed a small square and I'm going to stamp it to create my challenge. And I will also grab a little heart and stamp it in pink in the center to complete my boxes. I did feel like that bottom portion of my spread was pretty empty, so I thought to myself maybe I should use some of those sticker sheets that I used earlier and add maybe a sticker there and fill out that space. So I go with an open book, add some lines. I will color in my title, and I'll also be adding a drop shadow to my boxes. I really wanted them to stand out, and so adding just a simple drop shadow really helped everything pop and stand out. And I love how the spread turned out. Very simple, easy, and it's such a fun challenge. I also did want to mention that I use my bingo challenge to get me to read different genres. So I end up adding like historical fiction, self-help, maybe a banned book. So you'll get to see all those little genres that I end up using or adding at the end of the video when I share my finished and complete spreads in the photos at the end of the video. So keep an eye out for that if you want to see some of those genres that I use for my bingo challenge. For my next challenge, I'm going to be using one of my printables. I'm going to be doing my Reading to Zero challenge. I talked about this in my flip through earlier, and this is created by the amazing Jacqueline. If you're not subscribed to her channel, definitely check her out. But she has this amazing challenge, which is reading your books. So reading to zero and reading your TBR. So I'm going to be using my printable for this. All I am going to do is just stamp out reading to zero. I will color in those little circles and squares on the bottom to represent a book I finished, a book I own, and all that good stuff. And then I will be using my sticker sheets to add a stack of book right next to zero just to fill out that space and bring in some color. I'm almost done. I'm just going to grab that sticker sheet, add my book. I'll fill out my column of numbers and then call this done. As you can see, using printables really helps the process move faster and it's not overwhelming. So that's why I tried to sprinkle in my printables throughout my reading journal just to save myself some time. Anyways, let's move on to my monthly review layout. This layout is all about how many books I read throughout the month and what is my favorite book from that month. I'm going to stamp January through December. I like to stamp out my months first because when I add the boxes, I don't go through that with a line. Just kind of reminds me that I need to skip between the months. And that way the months kind of sit in between the lines, if that makes sense. And I'm going to be stamping monthly review as my title. I went with an outline alpha because I do want to color in my title and bring in some color through my title. And once I'm done with that, I'm going to grab my sticker sheet again, add another stack of books. These sticker sheets, I've become obsessed and I stamped less using my stamps and use those stickers just because they're so cute and they're a great way to add a pop of color. But anyways, now that I'm done with that, I'm just going to go ahead and add my lines and create my boxes. I'll grab my gray marker to add fave at the top and total at the bottom. That way it just kind of fades in the background. So when I come in each month and fill this out, it's like in the background and it's not overwhelming when I add my titles and my numbers with a black pen. So for my title, I decided to go with this beautiful blue so it can just pop and add a lot of color to the spread. You'll see me come back in once I finish coloring in my title. You'll see me come back in and go over a certain side of my letters because I wanted to add some shadowing to my letters, and it really makes a huge difference. So I definitely recommend it if you want to add some layering to your letters and add more depth to them. But anyways, once I'm done with that, I'm going to add a drop shadow to my boxes as well, and then we can move on to our next spread. Okay, so our next spread is all about my buddy reading with my friend Elizabeth. So I'm keeping this one simple. I was getting really tired at this point and decided that I'm just going to use my alpha stickers and not stamp. And also, I was worried if I start stamping, it's not all going to fit because it's a pretty big title. So I went with some alpha stickers, and I'm going with yellow to bring in some color. So I'm just going to use them to add buddy reading with Liz. And I made sure to leave some space. As you guys can see, I started from the left, but then decided I'm going to start from the right because I wanted to make sure that reading was closer to the edge of my fold, and because I wanted some space on both sides of my title, so on the right and the left, so I can have space to add a sticker or some books or something like that. So I went back to my sticker sheets and added some stacks of books, and then we can start creating my boxes. So for my boxes, this is tedious work. I make sure that I just draw everything out ahead of time and I just go over it with my pen. But I really love this layout for our buddy reading because I can track the date, the page count, and then the title, and I can even add a little book cover as well. So even though it's a lot of work, but it's so worth it, I basically set this up once a year. It's not a big deal, but I'm just gonna go ahead and create my boxes, and then I'm gonna grab a black acrylograph pen from Archer and Olive to color in 2 of those top boxes and just write over the black boxes in white ink to write out date and page count. It's just a great way for those boxes to kind of pop a little bit. My black paint pen is pretty dry, so this took longer than it should have, but I got it done and I was able to fill out those boxes at the top. Now I need 2 pages. This is only gonna hold 6 months, so I'm gonna end up creating another page. I'm not going to make you watch me redo these boxes because that's the boring part. So we're just going to skip that. And with the help of editing, I was able to create my second layout, and you get to see it all done and ready. Oh, and I do end up adding some stars underneath my book cover boxes. I can keep up with my rating as well. And there you go. My second layout is done, and we can move on to my calendar. So this year I decided I'm going to use my calendar printables because it's so much easier and I don't have to do it myself. And as you can see, I just trim it in half and basically stick it directly on my pages. And all I'm going to do is just pretty this up. I'm going to do this for every single month. Again, I'm not going to set it up right now, but each month all I have to do is just basically trim down my pages, my printables, add them to my pages, and probably add a little bit of stamping or stickers. This time around for January, I decided to go with some of my die cuts. And I'm just going to add this stack of book right above January. I will use some washi tape to add some color to the opposite page with a little die cut label. Now, the one thing I did forget to do is I like to add color to my calendar. So basically just kind of color in 1 through 31. But I forgot about that. I will end up doing that. You can also add some color to your list on the right side. So right underneath January, there's a space for you to add the books you read. So I can definitely add the numbers if I wanted to, maybe use my zig dot markers or something. But there's so many different ways for you to add color to these calendars, and I definitely recommend them because they're so much easier than stamping these out myself. Earlier in my flip through, I shared my little tiny book cover spread, and I wanted to kind of set it up for my book covers. So all I did was add some die cuts just to remind me that this is my book cover spread. I don't want to add too much because I really want to focus on the book covers, if that makes sense. But once I'm done with that, I'm done with my reading journal. I love how these spreads turned out. Some of them were tedious, some of them were fast to put together, especially the ones where I used my printables. And I definitely recommend keeping a reading journal. If you are a big reader, this is very easy to put together. At the beginning of the year, you only set it up once and then basically fill it out as you read. Anyways, you guys, as always, I will be linking everything I mentioned and used down in the description box for you. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. And if you are new to my channel, please consider subscribing, and I hope to see you guys very soon. Bye.